Hello again. It's lesson 3 of my Music Theory is Only a Theory format, and today we're going to introduce a new chord. And what I mean by that is a new chord, depending on what key you're in, it's the 6 minor. So if you're in the key of C, you play a C chord. That's a 1 chord because you're in the key of C. So the name of the C chord is the 1 chord, and the name of the key is C. But F is the 4 chord. And if you think about it, C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, and F is 4. That makes complete sense. G is the 5 chord. Talked about this last week. The 1, 4, and 5 being the most common progression. Well, the most common 4 chord progression is 1, 4, 5, and 6. A minor being the 6th chord of the C scale. So when you're playing a C scale as single notes, C, D, E, F, G, A is number 6. But the chord is minor, and it's always minor in the key of C because A minor is the relative minor to C major. That very familiar chord progression is the relative minor going to its relative major. Now, with that in mind, the 4 and the 5 play their role in that progression afterwards. If you go from C to A minor, the 4 is F, and the 5 is G. Oldies but goodies use that progression. The root chord, the 1 chord, the 6 minor, the 4, and the 5. You could do that in any key and have oldies but goodies. For instance, Ed Sheeran uses it on Perfect. Right? And pretty much the whole song does that. But Ed Sheeran does something with Perfect that is very important, and that is he changes the order of the chords. I've been saying it doesn't really matter what order they're in, and it doesn't. In fact, if you want to make that progression less oldie and more modern, do what Ed did. When he went to the chorus, he started with the E minor, the relative minor, in the key of G, that's number 6. Then he went to the 4 chord, C major. Then he went to the 1 chord, G, and finally the 5 chord, D. That progression, 6, 4, 1, 5, is the most popular progression today. So we haven't strayed too far from the original oldies but goodies progression we had in the 50s to what we have today, which is more of a pop type chord progression using the same 4 chords. And Ed Sheeran was able to demonstrate that for us in Perfect because he started with the oldies style chords and switched up to the newies style chords. And you're able to hear how that song went from very much a 50s type song to very much a modern type song, just from the change of that chord progression. Now, once again, it doesn't matter what order these chords are in. For instance, if you have a key of D, B minor is the 6 minor, the relative minor. G is the 4, and A is the 5. Then Journey is nothing more than I'm talking about Don't Stop Believin'. And so, and actually the original's in the key of E, and we'll deal with that. But that particular chord progression is also With or Without You by U2. So it just keeps mounting as far as those 4 chords being part of a progression. You don't have to use all 4. And sometimes you repeat some. Maybe you'll go D, A, B minor, A. You might have another A. You never know what you're going to do, but you can experiment with the 4. In the key of A, though, now, this is where we have our first bar chord, F sharp minor. Right? That's a first position bar chord. Basically an E minor that's been capoed with the pointer finger at the 2nd fret. So when you go from A to F sharp minor to D to E, you do it exactly the same thing. But once again, country roads, take me home to the place I belong. Those are the chords in the more modern order. A little different than the Ed Sheeran. It was the 1 to the 5, the 6 to the 4. That's also a super popular chord progression, but more like 80s, 90s kind of. It was giant. And then, it got overused like all of them do. Then they come back a little later. But it's important that you realize it's the same 4 chords: the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6. Finally, we'll do that in the key of E, the 1, and we're in bar chord land. Here's your second position B, bar chord. C sharp minor, second position minor, and A, first position major. So that's Don't Stop Believin', but it's also Rolling Stones. Once again, it's so similar to so many songs when you're dealing with these 4 chords that you can almost apply it to everything. It's just the order's going to change. Now, some songs, as we all know, have multiple chords. Just doesn't seem to stop. But these 4 chords are the most basic, the most powerful, the most familiar, and the most popular. So if you're looking to really extend what you do in terms of chord progression, you need at least the 4 basics to be able to do that. And you need to be able to use them in any key. For instance, tougher keys like F, C, D minor, B flat, glycerine. Yeah, so they use it for that. So feel free to research that. And once again, what you heard just then was the 1 to the 5 to the 6 to the 4. The order doesn't matter. Just remember that it's a 1 chord, a 4 chord, a 5 chord, and a 6 chord. And the 6 is always minor. Now, we're going to do a complete chord scale in the next lesson where you understand that every key has chords that are most likely part of the chord progression in that song that you're working on. Right? So the chord scale will help you with that and give you more options than just 4. But the basic 4 are the most important. No question about it. 4 chords is enough to make any great song. And if you know the ones you're supposed to use, you should be in good shape. Now that changes, as we know, with different songs. But once again, the chord scale will help us become familiar with the possibilities of the changes. As promised, I did mention that we were going to start playing lead. And I think it's important that you learn how to play lead. But I think it's also important that you know the notes of your guitar. So what I typically do as a warm-up is a 4-fret warm-up. So I play E, open string, and then F, F sharp, G, G sharp. That covers not only all my fingers, but it covers all the notes before we get to the A string. Then I start with that A string, A sharp, B, C, C sharp. Then we get to the D string, and I start with that, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp. Now we're getting to the G string, but I only go as far as A sharp. G, G, G sharp, A sharp, because the G string is tuned at the 4th fret to B, and so I go to the B string next. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and E ends the chromatic scale. Well, if we go backwards, I like to call them flats. That way you know that sharps and flats can occupy the same note name. E, E flat, 4th fret right there. D, D flat, C, B. B flat, A flat, G. G flat, F, E, E flat. D, D flat, C, B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, and E. So learn the note names first before you get too crazy about doing some lead stuff. The reason for that is that the open strings are kind of like landmarks. If you can remember the names of those on your guitar, E, A, D, G, B, and E, which is a normalized tuning, then you can remember usually the names of the 4 frets that are subsequent to those strings. So it gives you a place to go, and it gives you a place to go next. Literally, when you go from the E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, the next note is A, which is the next string. So you can see how that works. And the same thing works when you're going backwards and using the flats as the names. Whatever the case may be, the first thing that I teach in lead guitar is a pentatonic scale. And I don't teach it in a box position like a lot of guitarists would, because we are eventually going to do box positions, but I like to teach you the whole pentatonic scale so you can hear it and see it literally scale the guitar. And the first one that we learn is up to you, but I find that G is pretty common, easy, fun, and most people get it quickly. And it goes like this. The pentatonic scale is learned through fingering, not through note names. So if you start on the right note, G, with your pointer finger, then the fingering is always going to be ring, sling, finger, 2 away, sliding 2 away. The next string, right where your pointer finger is, you go to the next string and hammer, pointer to ring. You do the same thing on the next string, pointer finger goes, but this time ring slides, and when you go to the next string, the G string, that's when you hammer. So one string slides, one string hammers. We compensate at the B string. We must do that because the B string, as I mentioned earlier, is tuned differently. So pointer finger is 1 fret up, the slide happens on the next string, sure enough, the hammer. And then if you want to finish it out, pinky goes 3 frets away. The idea is that you can play country or southern rock or anything that's kind of on a happier bent with major pentatonic. Now, I played it kind of fast, so I'm not expecting you to do that, but I wanted you to hear what the end result would be like. As far as going slow, let me just narrate as I go, and once again, fingering, so that you can apply it to any key, not note names, not fret numbers, forget all that. Notice the fingering. Okay, once again, pointer finger is on G. If you want to know what key you're in, you got to get your pointer finger right. Once that's done though, you then slide 2 away with the ring. See how I did that? Next string, exactly the same frets as the hammer on. Next string, same frets, but a slide again. See how we do that? The pointer finger starts and then the slide from the ring 2 away. And same as before, the next string, same frets, hammer on. But the B string's different. You must compensate by going 1 fret up. You saw me do that with my pointer finger. And then sure enough, right afterwards, 2 away with the ring. It slides. Next string, sure enough, hammer. And finally, to end it, pinky on high G. I don't go backwards with this box because I find that it's already amazing going forward, but backwards even more so. So what I tend to do is backtrack through the box positions. So for those of you that know box positions on the guitar, we're not going to let those go. We're going to use them. But the pentatonic scale basically scales you through every single box position you're going to use. So you get a chance to use them without really knowing what they are. And then on the backtrack, we start to learn what they are. We implement more techniques. So far, we've implemented the slide and the hammer-on. Very important techniques, and the pentatonic scale allows us to implement those. So you get used to those. But we have so many more. The bend, the pull-off, the hammer pull, the trill, chromatics, double stops, unison bend. Lots and lots of cool stuff. And all within the confines of the box position. Now, we all know about confines and boxes right now with our quarantine situation. But the cool thing about the pentatonic scale is you start off getting out of the box, literally. In the meantime, enjoy the pentatonic scale. We're going to be reviewing it on the bass, so you get lots of chances to see the pentatonic scale today. And remember the 4-chord progression, the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 minor, the relative minor to the 1. And those two go hand in hand so well, but you also need the 4 and the 5. Keeping that in mind though, when you hear the 4, C, A minor, F, and G, no question about the oldies. In fact, Led Zeppelin kind of capitalized on it when they did Deer Maker. Right? That's a basically C, A minor, F, and G like we did earlier. Done with bar chords, 4 voice bar chords like F chords. But the A minor was like an F minor. See, it was barred with only 1 finger. So we're going to get into all that bar chord stuff, but really I'm trying to avoid the bar chords. So that's why the keys that I'm showing you in avoid bar chords. C, G, D. Now D has a B minor, so there's your beginning of the bar chords. A has an F sharp minor. E has a C sharp minor. So it's not like you can get away without them. It's more like you don't have to use them, and you can find ways around them. All right, I'm going to switch to the bass now, and we're going to talk a little bit about pentatonics and, of course, the 4 chords.